I'm a big PM Dawn fan. Yes, I still listen to PM Dawn regularly, like on a weekly basis. This is PM Dawn. I Die Without You. Beautiful song. And I'm playing it on Seal Radio on Pandora. So I used to subscribe to a lady named Astrolata. She's an astrologist, and she goes deep with astrology, numerology, doing people's natal charts. She raised a point one time about balance. And I really this will always stick in my mind. She was pregnant at the time she did this video, and she was talking about, her business and her husband and being a mother, and how basically having the balance of her husband really helps create balance within. She feels more level-headed, and she feels more, internally, at ease and at peace. And how she feels there's more, is the word homeostasis? Like that internal, or equilibrium, like that internal balance that she feels just by having a partner. And she said, generally, women do need men do need women as far as balance. And so to take it a step further, I believe that the reason that we are not in balance globally is because of the male-female dichotomy, among other things. She raised the point that seldom will you find a woman who may have a really big purpose, who may have to utilize that energy to refuel herself, revitalize herself. And you may see her alone, and you may not see her with a man by her side, because she has a really big purpose, something that she has to do, like some really big work that is part of her calling. And so sometimes she will have to develop the ability to develop that homeostasis, or that equilibrium within herself. And I always think about that. And I think about women in time, how, there have been warrior women of various civilizations, women who have actually fought frontline on the battle. There have been women leaders, even though I'm just speaking to those who live in the United States. We've never had a female president. There's plenty of civilizations that have had female rulership, women rulership. And so, wholeheartedly, I believe the most ideal situation is the balance between a woman and a male. But there are circumstances, seldom, that a woman will have to create that within herself. If she has a really big anointing, if the Most High has a really big purpose for her, she may have to do a solo journey. I was thinking also, shout out to Tahuni Ma'atara. He's an herbalist. He's amazing. And he has this quote that says, learn to process pain without the heart chakra shutting down. Learn to process pain without the heart chakra shutting down. What does that mean? Learn to process pain without the heart chakra shutting down. Life is really how you see it to some degree. And that's the reason why I can't say it's a monolithic approach to life, or it's a one-size-fits-all approach to life, because people see life in different ways. People see life as a journey. Some people see life as the final, in a more a final approach to life, or like life in its totality, like not so much existential, but really something that's more definitive and concrete, and having very specific goals for life very early on, and being very tactical about your life and very deliberate about your life, and setting those goals and meeting your goals. And then some people say life is an experience, life is a journey, and it's an existential journey, and come what may. So people have very different approaches to life. Some people are more lackadaisical about life. And some people are way more serious about life. So I don't have the answers to everybody's approach to life. But what I will say is, some people say like life is like the earth is a battleground. And we are going to have to go through a lot of, like, we're always going to have to be going through some sort of like battle. Like, we're here on this battleground as far as the world. And we're always going to have to resist and fight and things like it. It really depends on how you see the world. But understand that different people have different purposes. And for somebody who might be a light worker, they might attract some very interesting situations and some very dark people into their lives, because that's part of their work. That's part of what their assignment is on this planet. So when it comes to matters of the heart, I can't say like everybody has the same approach to relationships, and everybody, has the same view of what a relationship should be, or how what their ideal relationship is. Learn to process pain without the heart chakra shutting down. So if you know a thing or two about chakras, basically these are kind of like energy centers, and there's the heart chakra, that kind of an energy center that governs the heart. And through the collection of experiences in life, sometimes you can endure things that the heart has a very hard time withstanding. And so you may be going through life on your journey thinking that you're okay, but your heart could be shattered and torn and wounded, and the experiences that you're attracting are because of that fractured heart, because of that wounded heart. And I was listening to something that Mike Tyson posted recently, and he was basically in some saying that when you allow these certain things to change you, whether it's betrayal or a lack of trust, or somebody who did you wrong or whatever, and then you move differently, he said that means that the enemy won. That means that the devil wins, because they changed who you are. They changed your nature. And so when we apply that kind of logic to traumatic situations, oftentimes they do change us. We move differently. We think differently. We guard our hearts a little bit more. And so the quote, learn to process pain without the heart chakra shutting down, is sometimes these violations that we accrue in life can make somebody so cold-hearted that they just shut down their heart and say, I'm done. I'm finished with the idea of falling in love. I'm finished with the idea of giving my heart away to anybody. It's just like a block of ice. The heart chakra has literally shut down. Because physical pain is something that we can see, but emotional pain is something that's very deep. And a lot of times it's the emotional pain that's even more painful than the physical pain. And this is not to apply, because everybody's at different places in their journey, but I think that it's very courageous to love again after betrayal, after a lack of trust, after whatever it is. I think it's courageous to say that I'm done with love and I'm no longer going to be open to love because I've been so hurt, is kind of cowardly. It's kind of sheepish. It's fearful. It's fear-based. So big shout out to the healers. There's plenty of work to do on this planet. There's a lot of work to do. And as empaths, we feel things, we feel people, we feel situations, we feel things out. And what makes us even more intuitive is by our lifestyle choices. Specifically, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't pop pills of any kind, I'm not on any prescription drugs of any sort. I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy. And this is, I guess, kind of personal, but when I decided to stop all those things, like not having a glass of wine, not smoking, like, a J with some friends, and, not eating any meat or anything like that, and cooking all of my own food, it was bizarre what happened to me. And I'm not going to go too much into depth what happened to me, because that's kind of an experience that I want to share with people that are very close to me, but things changed. And things changed very drastically, and things changed very radically, and it was a very emotional experience. And I say this to say that we wonder what our what our life looks like. What does your life look like when you are free of any kind of clutter, right? Because you go to the bar, you have a drink, or if you smoke marijuana, or even if you have been prescribed different pills or whatever, an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or whatever, these are coping mechanisms to some degree to cope with your past. Could it be trauma? It could be pain. It could be all of these different things. Abuse. It could be all these different things. But also coping mechanisms to deal with the dichotomy that is life and the people that you have to encounter. And sometimes the things that life has brought you through, and sometimes the person that you've become. People have to cope. I remember moving from California and telling somebody that I met who was a fellow artist, I'm like, I don't drink, I don't smoke or whatever, and things like that. And he's like, whoa, you are bad ass. He was like, you're gonna take on like this life and not have like any external coping mechanisms? Like, there's various things that people gravitate towards. It could be sex, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be friends, it could be gossip. Like, you are really badass if you're going to take on life without having any vices, nothing to cope with this battlefield of life. And I said, yeah. Like, in order to have, in my opinion, in order to have confidence, you really got to show up for life and be a hero. And what does that look like to you? If you claim that you are strong, what does strength really look like? What does strength really look like to you, So most people have to kind of do certain things just to cope. And cope with a lot of things, It could be just like the cruelty and like the mean-spiritedness. Like, I think about like places like Hollywood or whatever, and it's like, people are like, well, you got to adapt. Like, this is how we get down. Like, people do these types of things. And or you got to become more cutthroat, or you got to become more heartless, or you got to become less naive, or you got to become... And it's like, but why? But why? Because everybody's like that? So I have to adapt to I have to adapt to a culture that has everybody on drugs? And then people say, yeah, the strong survive. But if the strong are on drugs, how much are you really surviving if you're not even having a real experience when it comes to this life? Either way. The world is beautiful. It's a beautiful world, but the world can also be very harsh, very cruel, very, very cold. And when it comes to relationships and partnerships, I say you have to be true to thyself. You have to be true to thyself. And that may require you to spend some time by yourself in order to know yourself. People look at aloneness and solitude as so daunting, as such. There's so many stigmas attached to being alone. Especially if you're a woman of a certain age. Well, why isn't she married? Why is she always by herself? And things like that. I've found my solitude to be sacred. I can't even put into words how appreciative I am to be able to have time to tap into me, get into me, and the things that I've learned about myself, and how that has now positioned me to be a greater asset to humanity and a greater asset to the world by tapping into me. And that's the good, the bad, and in between. I'm not always, like 9 times out of 10, I'm really calm, I'm really chill, but there's times where I get pissed off and I go off. You know what I mean? And some things come up and some things come out. And I don't battle with that. I don't battle with that. I don't say, oh, I should be so zen. I do yoga and I meditate and I pray all the time. Why is this coming up? No, I allow myself to experience being a human being in all of what that embodies entirely. So to thy own self be true, but in order to be true to yourself, you gotta know yourself. You really gotta know you. You gotta know your triggers. You gotta know what pisses you off. You gotta explore your inner child. When you get upset, you have to spend some quiet time and figure out what was it, what emotion did I just tap into that had me literally just go off? What was I triggered by? You have to examine yourself and find out what type of things bring you the most fulfillment. The times that you're the most happy, what are you doing in those times? The times that you're upset, what are you doing in those times? So life is really about getting to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, how are you going to know what type of partner is right for you? And to thy own self be true. I know for me, with the type of person that I am, I'm very strong, but I have a really huge heart. So I knew that whoever I ended up with, it couldn't be a cold man. And frankly, the minute that I see any signs of coldness, I run. The minute that I hear anything that sounds like extremely cruel, I run. I sprint. Because to thy own self be true. I know that I need a man who's very compassionate, who has a lot of empathy, who has a very warm heart, who's very kind-hearted. And so the minute that I see anything that's not of that nature, I run. And that's not to say that I don't allow my soulmate to be himself in his entirety, but you just got to know yourself and say certain things I just can't, like cruelty is something that I can't deal with. Mean-spiritedness is something that I can't deal with. I was dating somebody, and I started talking about his ex-wife, and that really was one of the things that made me bail. I was just like, I couldn't ever see myself with somebody who would talk about a woman in this fashion and be so condescending and so degrading to a woman, let alone to a woman he was married to, let alone to the mother of his child. I couldn't digest it. I said I could not ever see myself with a man who would be capable of discussing a woman in this fashion. And so I ran. And I say this to say also that, I encourage people, not just women, but people, to really listen attentively when you are dating somebody. And to never be in a place that is you're so eager to be in a relationship. Because once you develop that bond with yourself, you actually like yourself, and you love yourself, and you love your own company, then at this point, the candidates are going to either have to match your company or top the company that you have with yourself. Because you actually like your own company. You actually like spending time with yourself. You're not looking for, and this is the reason why I encourage people to not drink, to not smoke, because essentially you're looking for an escape from yourself. You're looking for an escape from yourself. And I'm like, why do I need to drink alcohol? Like liquor courage, I'm very courageous. I don't have any issue expressing myself by any stretch of the imagination. I don't need liquor courage. I could be totally sober and be the only one on the dance floor for a while. Dancing to this. Tell me that she's
the whole. It doesn't have meaning. Reality used to be a friend of mine. Cause complete control, I don't take too kind. Christina Applegate, you gotta...
I love hands on. But genuinely, I'm not even playing. Like, I have no problem being the only person on the dance floor dancing. I don't need liquor courage. I don't need liquor courage to strike up a conversation. I don't need liquor courage to loosen up. You've got some people who have never had intercourse without being under some kind of influence. Imagine that. Every single time they have sex, they're wasted. Every single time they have sex, they gotta smoke, they gotta do something to get themselves in the zone. Isn't that problematic? That you've never actually had intercourse without being in your state of mind, your organic state of mind? So know thyself, love thyself, because a lot of times, if you don't love yourself, that means that there's more work to do. But I promise you, it's not the drugs, it's not the alcohol, it's not the pills that's going to help you do the work. If anything, all it's going to do is prolong the work that needs to be done. Because you can just tap out, buzz out, and not do the work, right? So, relationships and love. To thy own self be true. No, some people are built differently. Like I said, I require a very compassionate, empathetic, warm-spirited man. That's part of what I need. Because I know I'm very loving, I'm very compassionate, I'm very empathetic. So the only way to develop a relationship that is reciprocal, where I feel like I'm not getting exploited or used or taken advantage of, is to attract somebody with my same heart. And shout out to Blue Pill, shout out to Red Pill. I was at one of their parties, their birthday party some years back. And there was, I don't know if it was one of them, it might have been Blue Pill who had it, or one of his friends who had a jacket on that said, "Protect your heart." And that was another thing I'll never forget. It said, "Protect your heart," in bold letters, right? So how do you protect your heart when life is a battlefield and you're constantly encountering very cruel situations and very, things that are very taxing on the heart? Well, we have to take personal responsibility. And when I talked about this person that I met that spoke so poorly of his ex, another thing that I took away from that was there was no personal responsibility in the conversation. I'm like, wow, it was all, when you hear somebody dissect a relationship and it's like, it's all them, it's all them, it's all them, and there's no personal responsibility or personal accountability that they take, that shows that they haven't grown and they haven't learned. And I'm not here to write anybody off. I can't write anybody off because I'm not God. So I feel like until you take your last breath, you are still evolving and you are still growing. I can't write anybody off. But what I will say is that there are people that are more so on the journey of radical change and radical evolution than others. And it starts with taking accountability and personal responsibility for who you attracted. People think they're being cute by running their mouths about their exes and talking about how this person was trash and this person was all these things. But it's like a certain type of mindset, like a certain kind of person is going to look at them like, well, who are you to attract those type of people? That's going to be the takeaway to a certain person that you're running your mouth about, trashing a woman and saying all these horrible things. Well, why did you select that person? Why did you pick that individual to be your life partner, to be your lover, to be your spouse? What was going on with you? And you said you guys were together for how long? So it wasn't a situation where you peeped those qualities and you bailed. So there's a couple different takeaways. It's like, well, you're either very fake, you're a liar. There's other things. There's a lot of different takeaways when people are going on and on and on about their ex or things like that. Like, well, how did you put up with somebody like that? And what did you do wrong? And what did you... And every single situation, every single relationship that I can reflect back on, yes, there were moments of potential betrayal or lack of trust and things like that, but I have to go in. I have to go within. And I have to go deep within to say, what was my frame of mind to even attract somebody like that in my life? What was the circumstance? What was I going through to even attract somebody that would exploit me, that would use me in such a way? What was I resonating on? What vibes was I giving off? And this conversation that you have with yourself, it should not contribute to your low self-esteem. It should contribute to your high self-esteem, because if the problem is within, then the solution is also within. You keep pointing the finger and blaming people and not taking personal responsibility or personal accountability for the relationships that you attract and continuously attract, then the problem will always be with the other person. And you will remain in a state of stagnation, a perpetual state. I guess that's oxymoronic, a perpetual state of stagnation, if it's always their problem. As a healer, as an empath, we have to set up energetic boundaries, because there's people that are going to be constantly picking at us or prying their way into their lives, trying to insert themselves into our lives, because they understand, they sense that we are healers, that we are empaths. But the bottom line is, you have to set up energetic boundaries, because you have to take care of you first. There's a certain population of women that I have to speak to briefly and say, I think part of the indoctrination is that going through 400 years of extreme oppression, trans-American slavery, has positioned you to feel like you are only good to be used. Like, years and years and years, centuries of literally you only being of service to somebody in some kind of way. Whether you were the matriarch, whether you were the mammy, or whether you were the Jezebel. And those are like the three archetypes. The mammy, the matriarch, the Jezebel. And you can see replications of those archetypes in contemporary society. But let me not get into my sociology, anthropology, African American studies bag too much in that. But yes, the archetypes are very much still existing right now, of the mammy, of the matriarch, of the Jezebel. And it was pretty much one of those three categories that you fell into. In all three categories, you were being used. In all three categories, you were being used. Don't think that for over 400 years of an indoctrination and of oppression, that it was just about your labor. No, some of you were sex slaves. Many of you were sex slaves for centuries. Mother was a sex slave. Grandmother was a sex slave. Great-grandmother was a sex slave. Great-great-grandmother was a sex slave. So you have been programmed mentally and through your DNA, through the blood that's running through you, to be nothing but a sex slave. Grandmother was a mammy. Great-grandmother was a mammy. So you have been programmed through your DNA and through your mind to be nothing but a mammy. You have been programmed and indoctrinated to only see yourself as somebody who is able to be used. And it's to the point where the indoctrination is so heavy that now you're competing on who's going to get used. No, I'm going to be the best Jezebel. No, I'm going to be the best mammy. And that mentality carries over into your relationships. That mentality of usury, that mentality of a lack of reciprocity, because you've been indoctrinated and programmed for generations to believe that that is all you are. Of service to another human being without receiving any love in return, without receiving any support in return, without receiving any nurturing in return. You have been programmed to believe that that's all that you are here for. And then you go to work, and the situations at work replicate that mindset. When you're doing the worst and doing the most and getting paid the least. And then you're in these relationships that are borderline abusive, even not physical. They could be mental or emotional abusive. And the idea is, why do these men just expect, like, oh, you expect that because pretty much every woman that you meet plays that role of putting up with your crap and receiving nothing. And not receiving the nurturing and the love and the kindness and the attention that she deserves because of the indoctrination. And you take advantage of that. You take advantage of that indoctrination. So there's a lot of dynamics at hand. When we talk about relationships, we have to explore trauma. And we have to ask ourselves what percentage of the decisions that we make are coming from a healthy place or are coming from a traumatized place, a place of trauma. Because you have some people who have incarnated on this earth through rape. They came to this earth as a product of rape. How does that influence how they're going to navigate the world now? How does that influence them on a deep subliminal and psychological level? And can they say that the decisions that they make are completely from a healthy space? And then we talk about childhood and the trauma and the molestation and the first person that violated your trust. And, shout out to Tahuti Ma'atara, who's had more experience doing light work, who's had more experience. And I refer to him. I refer to a Queen Afua. I will refer to a Sister Ajna. I'll refer to certain people because their life work is rooted in your healing. So they have a collection of experiences and they're able to put some things together and say, damn, I keep hearing about these women when they come to me for healing and they keep having the same daddy issues. And they're gravitating towards the same situations when they're able to select partners that mimic trauma. And so I'm listening to the healers who have been doing the work for a very long time. And I'm listening to the feedback that they're getting when they're hearing people's stories and their situations. And it's usually one of these things. People are traumatized. It's very often that the first heartbreak is from a parent, is from a father, is from a mother. It's very often that somebody's ideology of what a couple even looks like is from seeing how their parents interact. So when there's one parent that's absent, that's going to frame someone's perspective to the nth degree. A child, be it a male child or a female child, that has to see their mom be the superhero and see their mom be the protector and the provider and the breadwinner and all of these things is going to be having probably some very unrealistic expectations about women. So when a lot of these sisters come, to get healed and they say, this relationship, I just felt very exploited. I felt like the man, could literally just sit back and chill, and he expected me to take care of the kids. He expected me to do this. He expected me to do that. And then you might ask them, well, what was his childhood like? Oh, his daddy wasn't really there. He didn't really see his dad like that, and his mom did everything. Oh, well, do you think that that's maybe a direct connection as far as his expectations of you? The fact that growing up, all he saw was a woman do everything? And this is not to crap on men, because I say it, we all need healing. Men need healing too. As much as we've normalized the idea of single parenting, that's very dysfunctional. It's very, very dysfunctional. It's very traumatizing. As much as we've normalized it, because so many people, that's their story. This is trauma. This is very traumatic. To be raised by one person when it takes two to tango, And for that person to have to go through so much just to put food on the table for the family, that's trauma, guys. That's dysfunction. So instead of numbing ourselves out or zoning ourselves out, why don't we put the weed aside, put that liquor aside, and just deal with things as they are? Because there's no healing that's going to get done without us just taking a very naked, raw look at our circumstances and what we have in front of us. And that would be the first step to being able to cultivate a better relationship and healing. But if you are zoned out, and you are zoned out because you don't even want to acknowledge that there's a problem there, you're further away from healing than the idea of acknowledging that there's a problem. There's a young lady who is an artist who has tremendous stage fright and tremendous anxiety, and can't perform because of the anxiety. And this is just a rumor, and this is why I'll never ever say this person's name, but I was told, I'm an artist. Musicians talk. I listen. I don't repeat. But evidently, this young lady had a few drinks one night and said that, apparently she was molested by her uncle. And I put two and two together. I said that was probably the reason for her crippling anxiety, for her very, her stage fright. The fact that, people become socially awkward. People become reclusive. There's all different types of ways that violations manifest into adulthood. And so, number one is to get healed. And I say, when it comes to healing, I don't encourage people to go to psychotherapy. I don't encourage people to go to, and this is just me, because that could be the answer for you, to go to psychotherapy, or to go to a psychologist, or to go to a psychiatrist. That could be the answer for you. But I personally don't believe that that's the answer. I believe in going to healers. I believe in going to a Sister Ajna. I believe in going to a Queen Afua. I believe in going to a Tahuti Ma'atara. I believe in going to, for me, African-centered healers who don't believe that prescribing drugs is a part of the solution, but more of a Band-Aid effect. And really is creating addicts rather than healed individuals. Relationships. So when we can get to a place where we at least are honest with ourselves about certain things that need to get done, right? And I'm not being unrealistic and saying that you will only attract your partner when you are entirely and fully healed. I don't think that that's true. I went to see Queen Afua a few weeks ago. She said that she's still doing the work. Do you know how inspiring and motivating that was to me? To hear that? That the healer, the Queen Afua, is still doing the work? Is still taking time to heal? And she's one of the healers? Come on now. So I don't believe that you will ever be, it's a lifelong process is what I'm saying. But I think that acknowledging that there's work to be done, healing to be done, would be the first step to attract. Because the thing is, you want a real partner. So you got to be real if you want a real partner. I feel like people can work through a lot of different things. But you got to be real first. You got to be honest first. You got to be honest with yourself first. To be able to be honest to the person and say, yeah, these are some things that I've been dealing with. Or this happened in my life and this is something that I really am working on, but I have certain sensitivities when it comes to this, or this is kind of a trigger for me, and that at least that you've done the work on yourself, where you know yourself enough, where you can tell your partner these things, and they can say, okay, well, that's why. That's why when I touch my partner in a certain way, they react in a certain way because of certain things that might have happened to them. Or that's why whenever we have a conversation like this, it just seems like they get kind of agitated and irritated. And I don't understand. Well, that's why. So it's just a matter of understanding, right? And when we talk about understanding, we also have to understand that I am an advocate of monogamy, and I am an advocate of taking time to be celibate and taking time to abstain. And I'm not saying that you have to be a monk and you have to be in abstinence and celibacy, take a vow of celibacy your entire life, because sex is wonderful. Sex is amazing. Sex is awesome. Sex is incredible. Sex is one of the best pleasures that we have on this earth, right? But sex is also something that can be like a drug that you can numb out and zone out because of sex, right? And we have to also understand that through sex is kind of what can bring on a lot of our woes and our problems. Some people become emotionally attached. When it comes to communication, it's possible that you get into a relationship with somebody who thought it was this and you thought it was that. And now it's a whole situation. Just because that individual thought it was this and you thought it was that. And it was a miscommunication. So every single time you lay with somebody, you risk the idea that this could be a stalker. This could be a lunatic, psychomaniac. This could be somebody who thought it was this, but really it was that. This could be somebody who got emotionally attached, way too emotionally attached. And you got to deal with whatever that brings. Ladies, have you ever gotten a strange phone call? Like, who is this? No, who is this? You called my phone. Who is this? Who is this? Why are you calling me? I saw your number and your man. What? He told me he was single. Your husband? What? He told me he was single. He didn't even have a ring on, a wedding ring on when I met him. Now all this drama. You got drama for days in your life as a woman, and you're like, I really just like my peace. Please, I don't like all this. You've got women that get their tires slashed and just chaos. You've got women that are prying into another woman's life and in her business, and they want to know what her whereabouts, because she's jealous. It's just all of this stuff could be avoided. And don't get me started on men. You've got situations where literally 3/4 of your paycheck is going to child support. You've got situations where every single day all you're thinking about is all the money you're about to lose in the divorce. You can't even sleep at night. Because you know the woman that you linked up with is very vengeful and is very materialistic. And she's going to take you for every cent, every penny that you have. You know how wicked that woman is. You know how spiteful and how vengeful that woman is. You've seen how she conducts herself with other people. It's just a matter of time before that energy turns on you. Question is, why did you attract a woman like that? Are you greedy? Did you attract a greedy woman because you're greedy? Did you attract a money-hungry woman because you're money-hungry? You'd be surprised what some of these women are willing to turn a blind eye to just for a couple dollars. I just got to keep it real, my people. I just got to keep it real. So, whenever you have relationships with somebody, you risk all of that. And not just, the sexually transmitted diseases, the possibility of attracting one of those, but the spiritually transmitted diseases. Can you vouch for that man's background? Can you vouch that man doesn't have certain sexual perversions? Can you vouch that man think about it. If this man's gotta have it, that's not showing a reflection of the mastery of your lower nature. Where does it stop? Where does the id stop? Where does it cease? The neediness to fulfill the id. Is that man into animals? Is that man into children? You just don't know. Can you vouch for that penis that's growing inside of you? Are those entities something that you are willing to risk entangling with? Sometimes it's just like it's not worth it. When you factor in all of the things that you got to deal with, sometimes it's just like it's not worth it. And do I believe that men are naturally monogamous? I've had these conversations with multiple people. I would have to say I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not really sure if men are naturally monogamous. But I will say in our contemporary society, it behooves them to be. Because the same goes for a man. Like, I think that I could deal with the idea of a man, sowing his oats, and being out there and things like that in a sea of women that I know he was messing with queens. So he may have been promiscuous, but he was promiscuous with queens, with divine women who adhere to spiritual law. Women who keep their minds clean, their bodies clean, their souls clean, their wombs clean. Women who haven't had a bunch of abortions. Queens, righteous women who are in good standing with the Most High, women who are good to children and in accordance with the universe, peaceful, kind women and compassionate women. Okay, he was sowing his seeds, but he was sowing his seeds with some queens. Okay, he was out there, but he was out there with some queens, though. With some good women. Then it's like, okay, fine. We'll set our boundaries, but I know that I'm not going to have to deal with the residue of all the spirits that you've picked up from the succubus that you lay with. That's why it's not a bad thing to ask. Not like you're trying to keep a leash on that man or anything like that. But it's like, if he laid with a bunch of Karens, ugh. And a man needs to ask you too. Like, who do you lay with? Like, I'm not really sure if I want the residue of that. I don't really know if I want the leftovers of that. You laid with a bunch of jealous, spiteful, hateful women? Mean-spirited and cruel? Energetically, I don't really want to get entangled in that. I'm good. No thanks. And men, like, you laid with a bunch of men who are like perverts, will do like anything with anybody. A bunch of freaks. I'm good. You laid with a bunch of hateful people. People who are into all types of underground organizations and do hateful shit to people and things like energetically. Did you lay with a murderer, a homicidal maniac? Did you lay with somebody who has some very big spiritual infractions and has blood on their hands and things of that nature? I'm good. I don't want to bring those spirits and that energy into my life. God knows. God knows. So, relationship-wise, be what you want to attract. You don't want a heavy drinker? Don't be a heavy drinker. You don't want a man who smokes weed all day? Don't be smoking weed all day. You want somebody kind? Be kind. You want somebody compassionate? Be compassionate. You want somebody nurturing? Be nurturing. You want somebody intelligent? Cultivate your mind. Be smart. Don't be too eager. Don't be too eager. You know, a lot of times with relationships, we talk about people who have been together for a very long time, and I think that it's beautiful. And I've said this before. When I see a couple that's in love and they embody love, I love it because it's just a manifestation of love. And that should be a recognition that love actually exists and to not give up on love. When you see people in love. That's why even on social media, I feel like couples flaunt it. Flaunt that. If you are in love, please show me. I want to see it. It's good for us. It's good for the children. It's good for us so we can see that love exists. Show us. Show us who you love. Show us how you love. Show what you do for each other. It's good. It's good for us. It's a good thing. But then there's people who you'll say, they've been together 30 years, 40 years, and you wonder, were those relationships of love, or did they just take the most crap? Because there's a lot of stigmas about being alone as a woman, or at a certain age, even as a man, of being alone. But to some degree, sometimes it's a matter of what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. And not everybody is willing to put up with certain things, It's up to you to find what you want out of love, out of a relationship, and out of a partner. For me, like I said, compassion is number one, because I know how generous I am. I love to show my man love. I love to show love in every way. In every way. I love to spoil my man. So I have to be very selective, and I have to very much vet an individual to make sure that they're not the type of person that's a user, that they are capable of reciprocating that love and reciprocating that energy, because based off of past experiences, there are takers. But you can't blame yourself for getting got or being in a situation where somebody's using you, because you signed up for that. So there are a collection of experiences that you will have in this life, and some of them will be good, some of them will be bad. And whatever you accrue from the bad ones, it is also your responsibility to take care of that. The trauma that you incurred may not have been self-induced. It could have been from a violation at an early age. Somebody could have hurt you, traumatized you, or abused you in some kind of way, but it's up to you to become a healthier individual. That person's not going to come back necessarily and help you heal. So, that's how I feel. There's nothing wrong with solitude, and there's nothing wrong with aloneness on your journey for a period of time. There's nothing wrong with celibacy, abstinence on your journey for a period of time if you need to heal, if you need to get to a point where you know yourself, and if it's for the purpose of self-mastery, of course. Anyway, so much love. Peace.